Esa enai el heharim, Esa enai el heharim, me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, me'ayin yavo, yavo esri, me'ayin yavo, yavo esri. When I die, give what's left of me away to my children and to those who wait to die. If you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give to them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I have known and loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live on in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, letting bodies touch bodies, and by letting go of children when they need to break free. For love doesn't die, but people do. And so when all that's left of me is love, give me away. These words of the poet Merritt Malloy beckon us to draw together today. Death has taken our beloved Harriet from us. Our friends grieve in a darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. They are sorrowful. And at once, they are truly grateful for Harriet's life. Her love united all of us. Death cannot sever that. Her companionship that we shared along life's path. These continue now through the tenderness of memory, the gifts of her heart, her mind, her sense of humor that brought us all joy and happiness. These are now a precious remembrance. For all these and more we give our thanks, and in this time of grief, in keeping with the Jewish tradition, we listen to the voice of sacred scriptures that bring us an ever new message of the nearness of community, a source of meaning and life. In light and darkness, joy and sorrow, life and death. I invite you, if you wish, to join with me in the recitation of a 23rd Psalm. We say, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. And yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Ata imadi, the words of the psalmist are echoed today in the feelings of the Zelman family. Ata imadi, thou art with them. You should only know how much it means that you're here with them today, supporting them in this time of grief. At the conclusion of our service today here at Berkowitz-Kumin, a service of interment will continue at Mount Olive Cemetery. The family will receive friends and favorite stories of Harriet's, beginning this afternoon from 2 until 5 p.m. at Beachmont Country Club, 29600 Chagrin Boulevard. In lieu of flowers, and if you wish to honor her life with a contribution of tzedakah, if you wish, the family invites you to do so to the Jewish Family Service Association. And of course, they invite your continued remembrances and your gestures of condolence in the days and weeks to come. American essayist and short story writer Joseph Epstein once said, "We do not choose to be born, we do not choose our parents, we do not choose our historical epoch or the country of our birth. We do not, most of us, choose the time of our death, but within all the realm of choicelessness, we do choose how to live, courageously or with cowardice, honorably or dishonorably, with purpose or in drift. We decide what is important, what is trivial, what to do, what to refuse. And no matter how indifferent the universe may be to our choices and decisions, they are ours to make. We decide, we choose, and so our lives are formed." These words can demonstrate our shared purpose today. We gather to honor Harriet Zelman, whose choices in life exemplified resilience, uncommon decency, encouragement, and honor. When Harriet died recently, she chose to do so unstuck to a PICC line at a hospital, delivering medicine to her that was not going to be enough for her to survive with any quality of life. Harriet told me directly that if she truly had agency or choice in that moment, she'd have liked to stay on longer. In her words, she wanted to see how more of you turned out. But there wasn't a choice that would have avoided leaving her weak and hurting and with a weary and body and spirit that had already been through enough. It was enough. The only medicine left to heal her wounds left was time at home with loved ones. The people of whom I speak are a truly magical and loving, albeit noisy, gaggle of relatives, near and far, who've had the good fortune to be born into or become embedded through marriage, partnership, business, or friendship with a Zelman as a mom or a dad, a sister or brother, an in-law, a neighbor, a friend. To have been a source of rabbinic support within the Zelman family's orbit over these last many years has been an honor. Jerry, all of our unstinting support and sympathy is yours, permanently. We admire you and each of your kids, David, Debbie and her Bill, Dan and his Ellen, your late daughter Darcy and her Randy. It's so clear how your hearts ache over what Harriet endured. But after the rituals we conduct today, I also trust you'll see Harriet again as she loved to be, not as she died, but as she lived, so deeply enjoying the happiest occasions that life granted her eyes sunlight by which to quell over what she saw. I first met Harriet on such an occasion, giggling along with numerous Zelmans and alters as Max Alter playfully vamped it up in the role of Augustus Gloop in Willy Wonka on the stage at his temple. Today I can see the elation in her eyes at family B'nai Mitzvah and at Brett and Courtney's awesome wedding. And most recently for me, as she and Poppy Jerry read their parts alongside various Zelman and Knoll family members at the Hebrew naming ceremony for the stunning Miss Stella. If I can remember these moments, surely it is poignant, all the more poignant, when grandson Brian adds memories of Grandma and Poppy cheering on his baseball teams, not to mention sponsoring the uniforms. Both he and Andrew have been encountering in recent days people who've told them that it was his grandma, their grandma, in her professional role with her professional name, Harriet Shaw, who gave them encouragement to go into business or to hire the right manager or to have the confidence to calculate a risk in a venture or an investment. Harriet didn't crow about such accomplishments with clients to you. She did crow about you to her clients. The message was the same for all of you. Go for it. Seize opportunities. In a few moments, Brian, Andrew, and Max will speak at more length about this legacy and I know they'll make us laugh and smile with appreciation for their grandmother. But I do want to pause in the midst of this memorial just to acknowledge that if it weren't for Harriet's resilience to endure through multiple previous health challenges, if it wasn't for her navigating the frailties of illness over the last 2 decades and more, her presence might have been severed from loved ones long before those memories took place. It's because of Harriet's perseverance and tenacity and Jerry's patience as she took previous blows, got knocked down, and then rebuilt her strength, that she is and will always remain a force to be reckoned with, most especially in the lives of Zia Zachary and Zoe Zelman, Sadie, Max, and Sophie Alter, Julie and Brian Rappaport, Kara and her Jeremy Rosen, Brett and his Courtney Zelman, Andrew and his Shannon Zelman. I had a treasured portion of this past Friday afternoon talking on Zoom with these human beings, not to mention guest appearances by Jordy, Stella, Ethan, and Grant, her and Poppy's beloved great-grandchildren. During the midst of the call, it seemed to me that Grant was channeling his great-grandmother, holding court with all of us, to tell us about recently having a party at his grandma's home last week to try to make her feel better. It was no surprise to see Grant's tremendous pride in the mitzvah he'd accomplished of comforting his great-grandmother, because nothing mattered to Harriet more than family. Nothing. Till the end, nada, zilch, nothing for Harriet compared to being at the center of the action of what Max calls the circus of family dinners every Sunday night. And Max adds that to his grandma, family was her priority first, second, third, and last. Family was paramount. She learned that example, it seems, from her own parents when she was a young mother, to Darcy, Dan, David, and Debbie. Their mom and Papa Jack and Nana Myrtle hosted Friday night dinners that clearly influenced Harriet. So as her kids grew up, and once they were adults raising kids of their own, seems Harriet wanted her own version of what Shabbos dinner had meant as a child. Although for Harriet, you might say Shabbos, defined as a holy and sacred time for family, well, for Harriet it just happened on Sunday nights rather than on Fridays. I don't think I'm stretching it to say in Hebrew, Zeh hamakom asa Adonai, those dinners were places that for Harriet God had placed her to feast on life. She loved how in the best of times early arrivals at dinner included Debbie and Darcy, who somehow managed to have new things to gab about with their mom who they had just spoken 2 minutes ago and hours previous. The family was astonished by how much effort Harriet had put over each weekend, going to 4 different markets, not to mention her synagogue, Costco, to be able to serve a multiple entree Zelman feast, which, if on a small night only 15 were expected, Harriet made enough for 40. At Sunday night dinners, everyone took their places, watching sports, playing video games, catching up over food fit for an army. Even within the commotion, there were quiet, precious moments of Harriet listening to whatever your undertakings or hobbies or aspirations were. That was the focus of her energy. If you brought over a friend, even once or twice to a Sunday night, Grandma asked about them multiple times after. If you brought over a significant other or a fiancé, or later a spouse into the family, their place was permanent for Harriet. She treated her sisters and their loved ones the same way, looking after them, offering her love and advice, and as Ellen tells me, filling anyone's appetites with her special tuna recipe, her coffee cakes, grandma chips, and more. Ellen remembers with a giggle the very earliest period in Harriet's grandparenting when she could not possibly get enough of Andrew. Then Sunday nights were hardly the only time she'd act on her obsession with whatever feat her first grandchild had accomplished. As Andrew will testify shortly, that never changed. But it also never diminished the glow she shined on his siblings, his cousins, and when they arrived in the lives of Grandma and Poppy. Nor did it change the way she would make singing to Shannon on birthday phone messages. That Shannon has still kept since her marriage to Andrew, or becoming a source of optimism and an example of resilience to Courtney when she and Brett began their life together. Harriet was clearly at ease, radiating to Bill, Debbie's partner, the qualities of optimism and gratitude, looking after the well-being of her family for which he is so grateful to feel included. Ivy Zelman also testifies to me of how Harriet's fascination with wide-ranging topics, including politics, entertainment, or the economics of the stock market. Ivy said Harriet didn't just feel pride in you or tell others. She told you how much she believed in you. Brett talks about his grandma's incredibly deep interest in his life. He says, my grandma could have a conversation with anybody, and she did. She simply loved getting to be a part of people's lives, especially her grandkids and great-grandkids. Zoe adds that she'll never forget that even in her final days, Harriet looked Zoe in the eyes and with conviction predicted Zoe's life to be beautiful and filled with love. Zoe, you'd better believe that now. For your grandma's love wasn't only expressed in words, but also through your shared passions for food, art, and culture that you and your family will carry on long after today. Zach will never forget the power of his grandma's belief in people. She'd talk about the ambitions of contestants that she saw on Jeopardy or Shark Tank. And talk with Zach on the daily in recent months about both his aspirations and plans and his dreams to transcend those. Zia looks at her dad, David, and sees in him already the wealth of attributes placed there by her grandma, including determination, a strong will, and an open heart. She says these qualities make Harriet one of the strongest women she'll ever know. Kara adds that Grandma made everyone feel truly special, even people she had never met. When she was a student at Miami, Harriet made for Kara and her 7 college roommates a huge meal to take back to them, packaged up as a not-so-little slice of Zelman Sunday nights. Kara paid attention and still does to the fact that Harriet wasn't going to herself taste the meal or see the smiling faces of those roommates back in Miami, but nonetheless, she savored the signature act of giving to others. Julie adds that Grandma would give out not just favorite foods, but also princess dresses and makeup parties that she'd throw for her granddaughters. Whatever would bring them fun would bring Grandma fun. Sophie describes her Grandma Harriet as a constant source of protection, encouragement, and noodle cocoa. She could impressively turn any question about herself into a spotlight to shine back onto Sophie, wanting Sophie to be well, to follow her life's passions on their own terms. And that's what we want for you too, Sophie. Only happiness, fulfillment, and living life on your terms. And my friend Sadie told me on Friday afternoon that you could get one of 2 binary reactions, each of them grandma-isms, in response to the stories you'd share about what was happening in school, or even a story that happened on a show or on a dream that you remembered. Grandma would either say to Sadie, "That's a good story," or alternatively, if the story was sad and upsetting, Harriet would say, "That's not such a good story." This leads me to acknowledge the worst day in the lives of Sadie and her grandma. The day Darcy died. Well, this part of my eulogy could end as not such a good story, until Sadie and Max and Sophie filled me in on what happened next. At Grandma and Poppy Jerry's house at 1:30 in the morning, Harriet could have reached her breaking point, and let's face it, who would argue with her for doing so on the day her child died? But that's not what happened. Instead, this strong woman dug in and found whatever was within her to walk Darcy and Randy's kids into her kitchen and instinctually show them how to boil an egg properly, when to take it out, how to season it. Now, it is true that none of Darcy's kids knew squat about cooking for themselves. Not then, anyway. But they also never dreamed they were going over to their grandparents' house that night for a cooking lesson. It's the boiled eggs. That wasn't the point. Harriet, you were teaching them not only how to boil an egg, but how in the valley of the shadow of death, when Jews begin to grieve and return to life, we eat. We don't feel like it. We feel like screaming, but we don't. We get out of the valley of shadows by starting somewhere and making our way through the pain. In a way, she wasn't just teaching her grandkids how to survive. She was reminding herself of the very same lesson that we have to learn today. We've got to start somewhere. And it somehow makes sense that on what will be a bitter, cold day at the cemetery, Harriet will be showing us our way out of the valley on a path that begins in her kitchen. David tells me about growing up with the walls on his parents' kitchen featuring wallpaper that would be torn down shortly into having kids and later grandkids. The walls of her kitchen would be a place that anyone, including one-time visitors, had her explicit permission to grab a marker or pen and place their own graffiti on the walls around which Harriet cooked. How many moms, let alone Jewish moms, can you imagine letting their kitchen be walls filled with graffiti of any visitor? It was in her kitchen, though, that Harriet found a comfort zone. Perhaps that was enhanced by the chaos that surrounded her. David recalls the close proximity of his mom's office to their home growing up. He said that after putting dinner on the table for the kids, he can vividly recall in his mind Harriet sitting at that same kitchen table to make cold calls to potential employers for people she believed in and wanted to help them find a job. Think about the clarity and conviction and sheer energy that kind of action takes, not to mention the work ethic it continues to represent to her children. This was a woman who lived with purpose. Many of us wander through life easily distracted. Not Harriet. She has lived on earth for more than 8 decades. And this, the story David told me, is just one of many examples of her showing decades ago what she would be showing today if her body would have allowed it. An extremely strong capability to pay attention to the moment she is in and to the person in front of her. That's how she lived from growing up and getting educated, getting into the workplace, beginning a marriage, a long and devoted marriage, all the way into her final days. Harriet Kaufman Zelman was born on December 30th, 1934. To give you a sense of perspective, the President of the United States at the time was FDR. Harriet lived in Cleveland in the neighborhood of Patrick Henry Elementary School, was the middle of the 3 kids of Jack and Myrtle Kaufman, alav hashalom. Jack was a hardware merchant whose store on East 105th Street benefited from his dedication and clearly influenced Harriet's strong work ethic as Jack led his store for 45 years. The 3 sisters were close. Elva was born a little under a year before Harriet. And the 3 of them began their lives in Cleveland, but matured into young adults just on the street from here at Heights High. Each of them were raised to have strong roots in learning, Jewish culture, family tradition. To Lola, Harriet's baby sister, we offer profound sympathies as you hold the key to this part of Harriet's life now. We hope you'll tell us and help us tell Jordy, Stella, Ethan, and Grant about this part of their great-grandmother's life's journey. I know that when Elva died a few years back, Harriet herself told me that over the years, her sister could be critical of her, but Harriet came to understand that Elva's criticism was almost always out of an expressed worry that perhaps Harriet was working too hard or doing too much. And she admitted that in this respect, Elva was right. That's just like Harriet to have figured out and accepted agitation from a loved one because she understood its context and purpose. On Friday, Jerry told me that they met when Jerry's family moved onto the same downtown Cleveland street. He was all of 13 and a half dashing and handsome by his own description. When young Jerry illegally would drive around the neighborhood in his dad's car, not entirely clear that his dad was watching the mileage very carefully. Jerry was actually happy, though, to use the car to impress Harriet as though he were a driver and an older man, even though he was hardly legal to hold hands with, let alone drive in the same car with. Their courtship took them to Columbus and back here, but it apparently wasn't until filling out paperwork for their marriage license that Jerry finally summoned the temerity to show Harriet his actual birth date and not what he had led her to believe. Still, Harriet liked him and gave it a go, and has put up with his shenanigans for decades. Marrying Jerry on September 4th, 1955, they launched a life together, raising children at a time when apparently the names for Jewish children beginning with the letter D were on sale. Not only that, they bought a business and they led it with excellence and integrity. When Dan, Darcy, David, and Debbie were kids and into their adult lives, they've always been moved by how their parents forged such a strong bond, always holding tight to one another. Dan remembers with admiration his mom's influence on his own cousins growing up at Shabbat, Friday night dinners at his Nana and Papa's home, holding court with her loved ones, demonstrating that she was in their corner, something that I know he now relishes doing for his nieces and nephews, mirroring his mom's values. He'll always see how his mom acted as an advocate and mentor to people, a networker before terms like networker and mentor and advocate became professionalized by business and personal coaches. She wasn't in it for the business, it was just how she operated in the world. Dan and Debbie told me that each of them have begun to hear from friends who knew their mom when they were growing up or in her long career, setting up people for employment, or at the Yarn Emporium, another business that fed her passion for knitting. All of these people have told Harriet's kids that when you were in relationship with their mom, you left your encounters with an improved sense of self-worth. For Darcy, if she were here to tell the tales, many of them would have taken place on New Year's Eve, spent in Las Vegas, with both Jerry and Harriet right there at their side to share laughs and wishes, some to be attained and others to be beyond the grasp of her and Randy or her parents. And I also know because frankly, Harriet told me just over a week ago about a near-death experience 25 years ago that she encountered her dad in the afterlife. Harriet hoped in some way that she might reconnect with Darcy, even after this life. She wanted to be with your mom, with your sister, with your daughter, with your sister-in-law, with your Aunt Darcy, to smile on each of you and protect you as best she could. She wanted to know what I believed about the afterlife, and I told her that one day, a long time from now, when I go, I too have a few questions for Darcy. Debbie was sitting right across from me when Harriet spoke about seeing her daughter, while weakened by illness and beleaguered by treatment that had not been a success. But once she was done confessing this wish, took all of a 3-second turn for Harriet to switch the subject and name drop each of her grand and great-grandchildren. In the days since, Debbie has communicated to me how her mom has always been the same person that I saw last week. An example to Debbie always of genuineness, creativity, and of the idea that if you want something special, the only way to get it is to work hard for it. You don't have to be perfect. You might upset people you might upset people you meet who want the same things as you, but if what you desire is a cashmere sweater, or a pottery kiln, or a kitchen wall filled with graffiti, evidenced with messes your children made there with their friends, if that's the sort of life you want, all of it takes work. Harriet wanted all of those things, and Debbie tells me she is so, so proud that her mom got what she wanted. She bought the sweaters, purchased the kiln, planted the gardens, made the sale, bought low, sold high, and persevered through all kinds of tumult, failing kidneys and heart, so that she could know joy and goodness on the arm of her true companion, her beloved Jerry, and the family they've built. We can learn so much from Harriet Zelman. So let's start. Let's direct our attention to the people sitting squarely before us. Let's remember her desire to be with life, in life, as long as possible. We know that she did not meet all of life's challenges perfectly, but it wasn't because she didn't try her hardest, work her hardest, confront the choices presented to her with honesty, determination, irreplaceable humanity, and an unforgettable personality. Zichrona livracha. May Harriet Zelman's name forever be a blessing. Amen. I'd now like to call on Andrew, Max, and Brian to share some memories on behalf of the grandchildren. Give me 1 second. Just clean this up for you guys.
Before I get into what I have to say, I have a few words that my grandfather wanted to add in. The good days far outnumbered the bad ones, including traveling, raising 4 kids, working together, and so much more. He wasn't very religious growing up, but she brought Jewish traditions not into just his life, but the whole family as well. After 66 years of marriage and spending nearly every day together, she will be dearly missed. My grandmother was one of the most influential people in my life. She was always kind, positive, insightful, and always put her family first. My earliest memories of her are from early childhood, going to their house for Sunday night dinners. She would spend all weekend selflessly preparing, going from store to store, spending all day Sunday in the kitchen, just so she could have time with her family. Family was absolutely everything. It was every week, up until she started getting ill maybe just a handful of years ago. She always made it a point to be present with everything in our lives, from sporting events, graduations, weddings, anything. As a child, I remember having many birthday parties in their pool in their backyard, and just how happy she was just to have us all there. It was truly her pleasure. As time passed, we maintained a close relationship. Her advice academically, career-wise, and just general life advice was unparalleled. Honesty, integrity, hard work, and loyalty are the answer to just about anything with her. And as her health started to decline, our conversations became more frequent. But in true grandma form, whenever I would call and ask about her, she would tell me the very basic minimum of what I need to know before changing the subject to what's going on with me. She didn't want anybody worrying about her, ever. It was an imposition that she didn't want any of us to have to carry, although we all did it out of concern and none of us would have had it any other way. I remember as a child when Grandma had her brain aneurysm, we didn't think she would survive. Not only did she survive, but after she woke up, she started asking us questions about what was going on with us. And it was truly remarkable to have her alive, to see her well. Not a single complaint. Even in her final days, she never wanted to impose. She never complained. When the family was over in the last week, the joy that she had in her eyes of seeing her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren, you wouldn't have known she was as sick as she was. She never wanted to lead it on. Her strength was unparalleled. Her loyalty, her dedication, her hard work ethic, it was all unparalleled. She's instilled these values in me, and not just with her family as well, but she also did it professionally. She touched the lives of too many people to count, and I'm very grateful that I had the time with her that I did, and I truly believe that because of her, I've become a better person. Grandma, we're all going to miss you dearly.
Leaving a legacy takes a lot. When you think about the people you impact and the lives you touch, the rippling effect of the impressions that you've made on others helps ensure that your caring, motivated, and resilient attitude are passed on from person to person. My grandmother's legacy was more than just that. My grandmother's legacy was a dynasty. The Jewish value of Lador Vador discusses how we pass the values instilled in us from generation to generation. My grandma took this above and beyond. My mother and her 3 siblings have expressed to me the home-based environment at their house in University Heights and house on South Woodland alike. Grandma's house was not just a house that people would go to on occasion. This was the house that everybody would congregate at for the entirety of their Saturdays, swimming, kvetching, and laughing. And these emotions created were not just momentarily. This is what made my Grandma Harriet so great. That feeling that you feel when you first meet someone, that in the now feeling, was never diminished or removed. Grandma culminated this feeling into her relationships with whoever she met and maintained it through their entire stories. People that had been exposed to Harriet just one time felt that identical, all-encompassing, welcoming feel that people feel and felt the first time they interacted with her. And this is where she really thrived. My grandma constantly pushed people to do what made them happy, while refusing to accept anything less than their 100% effort. She recognized that every person she interacted with had different strengths and weaknesses and encouraged people to continuously seek out opportunities that complemented those. Through utilizing her massively extensive network, her adamant listening skills, or her true care about everyone she interacted with, Harriet ensured to make people knew that if they gave something their all, they could accomplish whatever they set their minds to. This is why so many people would congregate at those homes. This is why family vacations happened from Rosemary Beach to Vegas to Atlantic City to so much more. This is why the family would put everything else on everyone's schedule aside for all of us to congregate and decompress every single week on Sunday night, together as a family. This is why the Harriet Zelman that you knew in 2022 was the same one you knew in 2000 and was the same one you knew in 1960. I probably attribute this to her fighting spirit. Harriet's life knocked her down a lot. Health struggles, the constant and rapid evolution of our society over the past 80 plus years, the death of her daughter. Through it all, Harriet refused to ever feel sorry for herself. A piece of advice she continued to instill on future generations. I remember the night that Rabbi Nosenchuk is speaking of, that my own mother and Harriet's daughter Darcy passed away. Before it all, my grandma's first concern was ensuring that me and my 2 sisters were all right and knew we were supported. The unique and powerful concoction of values that my grandmother possessed influenced are the most important to me in this world were hard work and family. And I can speak pretty confidently that those are 2 of the greatest strengths and values of my other cousins as well. I attribute this to my grandmother. She treated everybody like family. And I believe a lot of the characteristics that have kept our family constantly close, regardless of whatever adversity we have faced are that. Back when we used to have Sunday night dinners weekly, which I know you've heard a lot about, but it would put any of your Super Bowl parties today to shame. Every Sunday was Super Bowl Sunday. It felt like she was bringing the buffet at Caesar's Palace back home with her on her carry-on from Las Vegas. I used to spend my first few minutes every week catching up with my grandma, a tradition I learned from my mother. I enjoyed that tradition so much that one week I asked for a delegated position to help out with the family. She asked me to make the cocktail sauce. And when I asked her how to make it, she said, "You put a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and there's your cocktail sauce." And I did. Every week, I'd put a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and the cocktail sauce continued to get a little bit better each week. She believed in creating opportunities for yourself. And I believe that this cocktail sauce taught me a lesson in life greater than I thought it would. Continue to learn and practice and make improvements and never make excuses. Because of this attitude, I used to always tell my parents and my dad alone after my mother's passing that I truly believed that my grandma Harriet was invincible and she was going to outlive the entirety of our family. Although she may not be here with us physically right now, in a way, I think I was still right. Grandma Harriet will never, ever be forgotten. The lives that she touched through raising her children and assisting in the development of her grandchildren and now great-grandchildren will carry the flame that Harriet Zelman represented and lit in other people forever. What Harriet represented and what she accomplished can never and will never depart us.
I had an internal debate on whether or not I even wanted to write anything down or prepare a speech in advance about my grandma. Because when you sat down to have a conversation with her or spoke to her on the phone, there was no script or preparing for that conversation. The conversation could go in any possible direction, and you better be ready to speak for at least a half hour and answer any possible question coming your way. I don't even know where to begin when talking about my grandma, Harriet Zelman. So much has been said and will be said about my grandma. She lived an incredible life and made a profound impact on the thousands and thousands of people she came in contact with during her 87 years of life. Dr. Eric Yazanow, upon hearing of my grandma's passing, said, "I had tremendous respect and fondness for your grandmother. She was a brilliant light to the world and the North Star of the family. I know that my life is better for having known her. She was smart, funny, kind, discerning, and she loved fiercely without holding back, a woman of valor without doubt." So true. The irony and symbolism of this funeral being held on a Sunday isn't lost on me and my family and shouldn't be lost on anyone. In my 39 years alive, I've probably spent over 75% of my Sundays with my grandma Harriet and the rest of my family, and the same is true for my siblings and all of my cousins. For over 30 years of my life, and even before I was born, Sunday night dinner was a tradition at my grandparents' house, from their house on Belvoir to their current house on South Woodland. I recently heard a podcast interview with Amir Questlove Thompson of The Roots, where he compared his Sunday night dinner with his family growing up to Thanksgiving every Sunday. I had two thoughts. One, that's the perfect comparison and way to describe what we did every Sunday at my grandparents' house. And two, I'd be willing to bet that his Sunday night dinner paled in comparison to ours. That phrase, willing to bet, is definitely appropriate to use when remembering my grandma. She and my grandpa, Papi Jerry, for as long as I can remember, loved to gamble. I remember growing up, they'd go to Atlantic City for weekends and then to Las Vegas. They are the only people I know who had slot machines in their house and who in their 80s were still regularly going downtown to the casino. It was a routine experience for them, too. They'd go down for hours and hours on a weekend night. My grandma playing three-card poker, and by the end of the night, learning the name, marital status, and job history of anyone at the table with her, including the dealer, and my grandfather playing some blackjack and then waiting potentially hours at the bar for my grandma to be done. After a corned beef sandwich from Corky's or some other late-night food, they would head back home,
sometimes well past midnight. I loved meeting them there when I lived downtown. My grandparents were down the street playing cards. Of course I had to join them. Robert Worry, an employee at Jack's Deli and a friend of my grandma's, said, "I'm going to miss you coming into Jack's Deli and me giving you that hot cup of coffee. You always had a beautiful smile on your face, and I always called you Mom. Such a sad day for me. May you rest in peace. I love you, Mom. You were like a mother to me." Going back to Sunday night dinners, you had to be there to understand the quantity and the quality of the food and how meaningful the experience was every Sunday. You'd walk into the house and you would smell her grandma chips, the strong smell of garlic permeating through the house, these incredible pita chips with garlic and all kinds of spices. I still crave those chips and never have had anything like them anywhere else that can compare in any way to these pita chips. They were outstanding. I or someone else would ask what was for dinner, and you'd better be ready to listen and maybe even take notes. There was spaghetti and meatballs, and salmon, and stuffed peppers, and garlic bread, and broccoli and cauliflower, and mashed potatoes. And be sure not to miss her famous chopped liver, along with crab salad, veggies, pita chips for appetizers. For dessert, there would be chocolate chip cookies, probably some ice cream, her famous coffee cake, fruit, maybe a pie, possibly some brownies. You never left hungry and always had food to last you for at least 2 more days if you wanted to. My grandma loved to prepare for Sunday night dinner and loved to cook, but more than that, she loved to bring her family together and she loved to host everyone. Bringing the family together was very important for my grandma. She truly was the North Star of the family. She was the one who brought everyone together Sunday after Sunday, year after year, from the time I was born to the additions of my brother Brett, my cousin Brian, my sister Kara, my cousin Julie, to my cousins Sophie, Max, Zoe, Zach, Sadie, and Zia. It was a constant in all of our lives growing up, no matter what was going on in our lives, no matter if the snow was piling up, no matter how busy everyone was. On Sundays, we'd go to Grandma's house to be with everyone. Jackie Moen, who used to work for my dad and with me and Brett at Royal Chemical, said, "I'm so sorry to hear about your grandma's passing away. My heart is heavy hearing about your grandma. She certainly was a very special lady and one of a kind. I loved our conversations. She always made me laugh. Everyone at Royal loved Monday mornings when you would bring in leftover goodies from her famous Sunday night dinners. I will never forget your grandparents surprising me at my 70th birthday luncheon. That was very special." The thing that stood out to me was that my grandma always wanted to make sure that everyone was included and always thought about making every person feel welcome. She loved all of that, making all of that food, but as the years went on, people's diets changed or wanted different things. She went out of her way to make sure that every person had something there to eat that they would want. This quality of hers, her wanting to make sure that she thought about every person in her family, extended beyond Sunday night dinners. Her consistency in making sure that she reached out to me and my siblings and my cousins and my parents and my aunts and uncles and all of our in-laws, and even more recently to the next generation, her great-grandchildren, Grant, Ethan, Stella, and Jordy, was unmatched. Every single birthday, anniversary, and even Valentine's Day, no matter where we were or what was going on, we'd hear from my grandma, and in multiple ways. You'd get a call and a card and a present or a gift certificate, maybe some candy hearts in the mail for Valentine's Day. It was amazing and hard not to take for granted how constant that has been in all of our lives, and it will be deeply missed. In the last year, I went out to the car to help her bring in presents for one occasion, and her trunk was filled with presents for the next couple of occasions. She always thought about everyone else and made sure that she made you feel special, no matter the occasion taking place. Even recently, when she was in the hospital, she asked my grandpa and dad to hand out some birthday cards and gift certificates to me and a few others. She was in the fight for her life, and she was still thinking about others. That was my grandma. She told me a few days before she passed that it was a pleasure being my grandma. Well, Grandma, it was a tremendous pleasure being your grandson. This past Tuesday, about 15 of us gathered at her house to see her, and none of us knew that it would be the last time. It was the first time in a long time that we had a meal at her house. She was unable to get out of the chair and was weak, but it brought back so many memories of past Sunday night dinners. The kids were all playing, there was plenty of food, and we were all together for one last time at my grandparents' house. It was almost like she was holding on or needed that family dinner one more time. Even then, she was thinking about everyone else. She heard my son Grant say that he wanted to watch Jeopardy, and at 7:30, she asked us all to gather around to watch Jeopardy, because she didn't want to disappoint Grant, and she wanted everyone to be together. She will be missed tremendously by so many. She told us when we left her house on Tuesday that she hoped to see us again, and I'm sorry that we didn't get that chance.
I invite you now to rise for the El Male prayer. El Male Rachamim, Shochen Hamromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזכירים, את נשמת חיה בת יעקב וחדשה שהלכה לעולמה. בעל הרחמים יסתיריה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Harriet Zelman. She has entered eternity. God of mercy, let her now find refuge in the shadow of your wings. Let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. age of our life, or 3 score and 10, strength, 4 score years, more, 1,000 years, or yes. Teach us the work and number of
Put on your headlights and your hat in flash. Thank you very much.
I